Black veteran falsely arrested. What happened next? Shut down the entire police precinct. It was a quiet fall evening in Millbrook. The streets were calm, the sky glowing orange as the sun dipped low. A tall black man jogged steadily along the sidewalk, his German shepherd beside him, their rhythm in sync like they'd done this 1,000 times before. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, alert but calm. The man, dressed in dark athletic gear, kept his breathing even, his eyes scanning ahead but relaxed. His dog tags clinked gently against his chest with each step, a soft, steady sound that somehow felt peaceful. To anyone watching, it looked like just another peaceful run. But for him, this jog was more than that. It was therapy. A way to clear his mind. A way to feel normal again after everything he'd been through overseas. He had spent years in combat, years seeing things no person should see. Now back home, these quiet runs helped him feel like he still belonged somewhere. But something about tonight felt different. He couldn't explain it at first. Maybe it was the way that police cruiser had circled the block. Once, then again. Maybe it was how the officer inside seemed to stare too long. Or maybe it was just a feeling, one he couldn't shake. He tried to ignore it, kept his pace steady, reached down to pat his dog. "Good run, boy," he said softly. The dog leaned into his touch, tail wagging, trusting. The man smiled, but only for a moment. Then he checked his watch and turned toward home. On the way back, he passed the gas station. The lights were on. His tank was low. He figured he might as well fill up now. He pulled in, parked by the pump, and got out. The dog stayed in the car, head poking out the window, watching. He swiped his card, started pumping gas. Then he noticed them, 2 officers near the store entrance, not doing anything in particular, just standing, watching him, whispering something to each other. He didn't react, just kept his eyes forward, calm, careful. But his stomach was tight. That feeling again, like back in the war, when something was about to go wrong. Then he saw it. A teenager, black, maybe 15, back pressed against the wall of the store. Hands up. The officers were crowding him, one of them getting in his face. The boy looked scared, really scared. The man froze. Every part of him wanted to walk over, say something, stop it. But he knew better. In Millbrook, stepping in could turn a bad situation into something worse. He'd seen it before. Even wearing a uniform hadn't stopped people from treating him like a threat. So he stayed where he was, watched from the corner of his eye. Finished pumping gas, replaced the cap, got back in the car. His dog let out a low whine. "I know," he said softly. "I saw it too." He took the long way home, trying to clear his head. But the feeling only grew stronger. He couldn't stop thinking about that kid. Couldn't stop remembering all the times someone had looked at him. The same way, with suspicion, with fear. He was 3 blocks from home when he saw the lights, red and blue flashing in his rear view. A police car. He checked everything. Speed? Exactly the limit. Turn signals? Used them? License and registration? All current. Still, he knew what was coming. He pulled over slowly, hands on the wheel, just like he'd practiced, just like he'd taught others to do. The door opened behind him. Heavy boots on the pavement. A voice. "License and registration." He kept his voice calm. "May I ask what I'm being stopped for, officer?" No answer, just a flashlight in his eyes. He handed over everything. License, registration, military. ID. The officer looked at them, then looked at him. "Military, huh?" the officer said, a note of sarcasm in his voice. "Special ops?" "Yes, sir," the man replied evenly. 12 years, honorably discharged. The officer narrowed his eyes. "Step out of the car." And that's when the man knew. This wasn't just a stop. This was something else. Something bad. He took a slow breath and stepped into the moment. That would change everything. The air felt heavier the moment he stepped out of the car. The kind of heavy that wraps around your chest and doesn't let go. He moved carefully, hands where they could be seen, like he'd done in war zones. Only this wasn't a battlefield, not officially. This was home, or it was supposed to be. The officer's flashlight moved up and down, slowly scanning him like he was already guilty of something. His dog sat quietly in the back seat, eyes trained. On the officer, ears alert. The man didn't say anything. He knew better. The officer circled the car once, slowly, then came back. "You're in a high-crime area," he said. "You match a description." That line. He'd heard it before. So had 100 other black men in this town. Tall, dark jacket. Looks suspicious. It was vague enough to mean anyone, but specific enough to always mean someone who looked like him. He stayed calm. "Sir, I just came from Veterans Park. Evening run. Stopped for gas." The officer didn't seem to care. He motioned to his partner, who had just pulled up behind them in another cruiser. 2 now. "Out of the car," the first officer ordered again, more forceful this time. The man gave a single nod. "Okay, I'm complying." His hands moved, slowly to open the door wider. As he stepped out fully, he could feel the tension rising. His dog barked once but didn't move, well trained to stay still no matter what. As soon as the man turned slightly to explain himself again, the first officer grabbed his arm hard. A reflex kicked in. Years of combat training his body couldn't ignore. He stiffened, but didn't fight back. "Don't resist," the officer barked. "I'm not resisting," he said clearly. But it didn't matter. In a flash, both officers had him down. Face first on the pavement, knees pressing into his back. His breath punched from his lungs. His dog tags snapped off as he hit the ground, the sound of metal clinking louder than anything else in that moment. His cheek scraped, hard against the asphalt. Pain throbbed through his ribs, but worse than the physical pain was the feeling. That feeling of being powerless, of being dehumanized, and of knowing deep down that they didn't see him as a person, not as a soldier, not even as a man, just as a threat. Voices started to rise nearby. Someone across the street shouted, "Hey, what's he done?" Phones came out, cameras pointed. The man heard the officers yelling at the small crowd to back up, to stop recording. But people didn't listen. Not this time. One officer leaned close, whispering something only he could hear. "You should have just kept your head down." He felt the metal cuffs tighten. Too tight. Deliberate. As they dragged him up, he caught a glimpse of his broken dog tags lying in the gutter. His dog barked again, louder this time, but still didn't move. The officers hadn't even noticed him there, too focused on flexing their power. Back inside the cruiser, they slammed the door behind him. No explanation. No charges read. No rights. Just the cold silence of a man realizing how easily justice can vanish. The drive to the precinct was long, not in miles, but in thought. Every second felt like it stretched. Every glance from the officer in the mirror felt like a warning. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He was still in uniform, but tonight, that didn't protect him. At the station, he was walked in like a criminal. His military ID was passed between officers like a fake badge from a Halloween costume. One officer chuckled and said, "Looks real, too real." The man stared straight ahead. A few officers looked away, uncomfortable. But none said anything. He was booked, fingerprinted, pushed into a holding cell with blood on his lip and fire in his chest. His ribs ached with every breath. The room smelled of sweat and concrete. 2 other men were already there, both quiet. One of them looked up, squinting. "You're that vet, right?" he asked quietly. The man nodded once. The older man leaned closer and whispered, "They messed with the wrong one. People are already talking." The soldier said nothing, but he knew something had shifted, and somewhere outside this building, his sister had just picked up her phone, and she was dialing every contact she had, because this time they arrested the wrong man, and this time the world was going to know. The holding cell was cold, not just the temperature, but the feeling. Concrete walls, a thin bench, and silence thick enough to choke on. He sat still, back against the wall, trying to breathe through the sharp pain in his side. The cuffs had been removed, but the bruises were already blooming. His split lip throbbed. His thoughts kept drifting back to the broken dog tag still lying outside on the street. A small piece of metal, but it meant everything. His name, his service, his sacrifice, all of it reduced to scraps in the gutter. The man sitting across from him shifted slightly, middle-aged, rough around the edges, clothes worn. He studied, the veteran for a moment before speaking. "You were at the shelter last month, right? Helping with benefits paperwork?" The veteran nodded slowly. "I remember you," the man said. "You helped me get into housing, got me out of the cold." The veteran said nothing, just gave a faint nod. The man looked down. "They got no shame," he said quietly. "None. But arresting someone like you? That's gonna bring heat." The door opened with a loud clang. A young officer stepped in, clipboard in hand. Her face was blank, but her eyes told a different story. She hesitated just a second before walking over. "Cole," she said, not looking him in the eyes. "You're being checked for injuries." He followed her down the hall, limping slightly. Every step sent pain. Through his ribs. He recognized the hallway, booking area to medical room. He'd walked it before, but never like this. Inside the small medical room, she pulled out gloves, gauze, antiseptic. Her hands moved carefully, but her expression was hard to read. She dabbed at his face gently. "This isn't right," she said under her breath, barely a whisper. He looked up at her. "Then say something." She paused, then resumed cleaning his wounds. "I'm just a patrol officer," she said. "They don't listen to me." "Maybe they will if you stop being silent." She didn't answer, but something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. She packed up the first aid kit and walked him back without another word. Back in the cell, the older man leaned over again. "You got people out there?" The veteran nodded. "A sister." "Good," the man said. "They're gonna need to make noise, 'cause in here they try to make you disappear." He didn't need the warning. He'd already figured that out. Later that night, the cell block grew quieter. Fewer officers walking past. Less noise from the other rooms. But something felt off, again. That feeling from earlier. The kind you get right before a mission goes sideways. He was still sitting against the wall when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. 2 officers, both different from before. Bigger. Meaner. "Cell check," one of them said. No emotion in his voice. The veteran stood up slowly. "I'm not resisting." The first punch came fast, right to the ribs. Then another, lower. He gasped, bent over. A hand grabbed his shoulder and shoved him into the wall. "Thought you were better than us?" One of them sneered. "With your little medals?" More hits followed. Quick, practiced. Not sloppy, not wild. These were the kind meant to hurt without showing too much. The kind you don't learn on the street. You learn inside the system. He didn't scream, didn't fight back, just tried to stay on his feet. The door opened. Again. A voice. "That's enough." The officers turned. It was the young female patrol officer again. Her voice was calm, but tight. Too tight. "Sergeant says move him." They hesitated, exchanged a glance, then left the cell. The veteran slid, back down to the bench, breathing hard, pain flaring in his ribs. The young officer lingered by the door. "I'll find a way," she whispered, "but you've got to stay alive long enough." He looked up at her, eyes sharp despite the bruises. "I've been through worse," he said quietly, "but I'm not dying in silence." When she left, he leaned back and closed his eyes. Let the pain settle. Let the thoughts slow. Somewhere in the building, he knew they were already rewriting the report. Resisting arrest. Uncooperative. Aggressive. But somewhere, outside, his sister was typing. And the people were already starting to listen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard like she was racing time. She hadn't slept, barely eaten. But none of that mattered now. Outside the little apartment, Millbrook still looked quiet. Ordinary, the kind of town where trouble stays hidden under a friendly smile. But inside this apartment, the truth was coming alive, line by line, word by word. She had a list in front of her. Names, cases, dates. People who had reached out after hearing her brother was arrested. Some whispered, some cried. All of them had stories that sounded too familiar. False stops, fake charges, lost jobs, broken homes, and now her brother, a decorated veteran, was behind bars with no charges, no phone call, and visible bruises. She had photos, sent secretly by someone inside the building. She didn't know who, but the pictures were real. The damage was real, and so was her rage. She'd seen injustice before. As a journalist, she'd reported on small-town politics, school board lies, even corporate greed. But this was different. This was personal, and she wasn't just going to tell the story. She was going to make sure the world listened. She hit publish on the article. Then she picked up the phone. One call to a national outlet, another to a local veterans group, another to a civil rights attorney she trusted, and then she tweeted, "Decorated black veteran falsely arrested, beaten in custody. No charges filed. This is Millbrook PD. This is America. Justice for Cole." By morning, it had over 20,000 retweets. Back inside the precinct, word was spreading. Officers walked more quietly now. Conversations happened in whispers. Doors closed a little faster. The commanding officer, Sergeant Marshall, stood in his office, staring at the article on his computer screen. His jaw clenched. His face didn't move, but his knuckles turned white against the desk. "They're coming for us," one of the lieutenants said. Marshall didn't answer. He clicked on the images, zoomed in on the bruises. "This is a setup," he finally said. "We control the story." But deep down, he knew something had shifted. Out in the hall, Officer Brooks, still new, still trying to figure out what kind of cop she wanted to be, stood beside the evidence room door. Her heart beat fast. Her fingers trembled. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed. The file upload had finished. She'd copied everything. Audio, paperwork, even body cam footage that was deleted. She hadn't planned to be a whistleblower. She hadn't planned anything. But after watching what they did to that man, after seeing the pain in his eyes and the pride still holding him upright, she knew she couldn't stay quiet. She slipped her phone into her locker, tucked behind an extra pair of socks. If anyone found out what she'd done, it was over. Her job, her safety, maybe even her freedom. But she'd seen enough. Later that day, 2 unmarked black SUVs parked near the station. A man in a suit stepped out. He didn't flash a badge. He didn't raise his voice. He just walked in, quiet and direct. and asked to speak to someone in charge. He said he was from the Pentagon. By evening, federal agents were quietly observing from a nearby building, watching movements, taking notes, listening. The town didn't know yet, but something bigger than anyone expected was starting to unfold. In the holding cell, the veteran sat alone again. His side still ached, his lips still swollen, but there was a different kind of pain now, waiting, not knowing what was happening outside, not knowing if anyone was still fighting for him. Then he heard the voice, faint at first, then louder. "I want to see my brother, and I'm not leaving until I do." He smiled. His sister had found him, and if she was here, they weren't going to be able to keep this quiet for long. Marshall stood behind the one-way mirror, watching the reunion unfold. He could feel the walls closing in. His phone buzzed with messages from people telling him to calm the situation. Down, get ahead of it. But it was too late for that. Outside, the town looked the same. But inside this building, truth had already slipped through the cracks, and there was no stopping it now. The veteran sat on the bench inside the dimly lit cell, his back straight despite the deep aches in his ribs. His face was bruised, lips swollen, but his eyes were steady. It wasn't pride keeping him upright. It was training, instinct, survival. From down the hallway, voices echoed, muffled but tense. "She's outside again. With a lawyer this time. Let her wait. She's got reporters now." He closed his eyes and smiled for the first time in hours. His sister didn't back down. Never had. Even when they were kids and he told her to stay out of his fights, she always found a way in. And now she was out there, raising hell for him. He could picture her, messy bun, phone in one hand, folder of documents in the other, demanding names, timelines, answers. She didn't need a weapon. Her voice was won. Still, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Not yet. He shifted carefully, pain shooting through his side. Every breath reminded him how fragile the line was between silence and survival. That beating the night before wasn't just about control, it was a warning. A message: don't make noise, don't resist, don't think you matter. But now, things were different. Now someone was listening. The cell door opened. 2 officers entered. Not the young woman from before. These 2 had sharp eyes and sharp intentions. The taller one spoke first. Time for questioning. He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know you needed answers from someone you already called guilty." The officer didn't laugh. "Let's go." He stood slowly, refusing to show how much his ribs screamed, refusing to let them see anything but calm. They led him down a hallway, not to the front, where interviews happened, but toward the back of the precinct. A part of the building most people never saw. He noticed everything. Unmarked doors, no cameras in the corners, no passing officers. They pushed him into a room with no windows. Just one chair, one table, one light overhead that flickered slightly. Like it was warning him too. The door shut behind him, locked. He stood still. Then Sergeant Marshall walked in. He didn't say anything at first. Just circled the table slowly, like a lion testing a fence. "You've made quite a mess," Marshall finally said. People asking questions, reporters sniffing around, even the Pentagon making calls. The veteran didn't speak. Marshall leaned forward, both hands flat on the table. "You think this is going to end the way you want it to?" Still no reply. "You're going to sign a statement," Marshall said. "You're going to say you were mistaken. Say you resisted. Say we used necessary force." The veteran blinked slowly. "You really think I survived 2 tours overseas just to lie for you?" Marshall's jaw twitched. "You don't have a choice." And then the veteran spoke, calm and clear. "You're scared." Marshall's laugh was sharp. "Scared? Of what? You?" "No," the veteran said. "Of the truth." Marshall's face darkened. He slammed his hand on the table. "You don't get it. I am the law here. Always have been. And people like you, people who make noise, you disappear." The room went quiet. Then the door opened. Officer Brooks stepped inside, holding a clipboard. Her voice was steady. "Sorry to interrupt, sir. You're needed up front." Marshall glared at her. "Handle it yourself." Brooks didn't blink. "They asked for you by name." For a long second, no one moved. Then Marshall left, muttering under his breath. Brooks shut the door behind him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're watching now. Feds, media, civil rights lawyers. He knows it. That's why he's pushing so hard." The veteran looked at her. "And you?" "I'm still here, aren't I?" She walked over, handed him a bottle of water, and slipped a folded piece of paper into his palm. Then she left. He unfolded it after she was gone. Just a short note, scribbled in rushed handwriting. "Don't break. You're not alone. The truth's already moving." He held the paper tightly. For the first time since the arrest, he let himself believe, just a little, that the fight was turning, because when power starts to panic, that's when justice finds a way in. The precinct didn't feel like a police station anymore. It felt like a building full of cracks, like everything that had been hidden for years was starting to show through. You could see it in the officers' eyes, the way they walked faster, the way they whispered more. Some looked nervous, some angry, some just tired. He sat in the corner of the holding cell again, staring at the blank wall. His ribs ached. His shoulder had gone stiff. But his mind? His mind was clear. He had the note from the young officer folded in his pocket, just under his waistband. He'd read it again and again, the words echoing louder than any threat they'd thrown at him. "Don't break. You're not alone. The truth's already moving." He believed it now. Not because someone told him to, but because he could feel it. The shift. That morning, a new officer walked past his cell. Young, nervous, maybe fresh out of training. He glanced at the veteran, then away quickly. But just before he turned the corner, he whispered without stopping, "They're coming." That's all he said, but it was enough. Minutes passed, then hours. He heard nothing, saw no one. Just the flickering light above the cell and the dull hum of a precinct trying to pretend everything was still under control. Then something changed. Fast footsteps, raised voices, doors slamming open. "Sir, we've got a situation." Who gave them access? "Get that door locked now!" The veteran stood slowly, hand against the wall to steady himself. He walked to the bars, looked down the hallway, and then he saw it. Two people in plain suits walking in like they owned the place. Calm, focused. No rush, but with the kind of presence that made everyone stop what they were doing. One had a file under her arm. The other was already holding a phone up, recording as they spoke to the front desk. Behind them came others, people with badges around their necks, not on their chests. Federal ones, FBI. One of the older desk sergeants tried to object, tried to raise his voice, but the woman in the lead didn't blink. "We're not asking. We have the authority, and we have evidence." That word, evidence, carried through the building like a gunshot. In Sergeant Marshall's office upstairs, a phone started ringing nonstop. News outlets, internal affairs, federal oversight. His empire was crumbling, and he knew it. In the holding area, a pair of agents approached the veteran's cell. "Staff Sergeant Cole?" one of them asked. His voice was steady, respectful. "Yes. We're with the Department of Justice. You're being released, pending medical evaluation and immediate investigation into your arrest." Cole didn't speak right away. He just stood still, blinking slowly. It wasn't the words. It was the way they were said. Like he mattered. Like he wasn't a suspect, but a citizen. A person. They opened the cell. And for the first time since he was dragged off the pavement and thrown in that cruiser, he stepped forward on his own terms. His sister was waiting outside, standing beside a reporter, her phone still in her hand. When she saw him, she didn't cry, she didn't shout, she just walked over, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "I told you I wasn't leaving without you." A few steps away, a plain van marked Federal Evidence Collection rolled into the lot. Inside the precinct, Officer Brooks sat quietly at her desk as agents walked past her with boxes, hard drives, and sealed envelopes. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her phone had already backed up everything to the cloud, the voice recordings, the missing body cam files, even the altered reports she'd been asked to sign. She'd done her part, and now, finally, the truth had a bigger microphone. Sergeant Marshall was nowhere to be seen. Rumor was he'd locked himself in his office, making last-minute calls to people he thought could protect him, but no one was answering anymore. Outside, a small crowd had formed near the sidewalk. Neighbors, veterans, local pastors. They didn't chant. They didn't scream. They just stood there, holding signs that read, "We see you." No more silence. Justice isn't optional. Cole looked around. He wasn't smiling. He was standing, strong, quiet, still bruised, but not broken. And, for the first time in a long time, he felt the wind at his back, not against him, with him, because the truth was out now, and the system that tried to erase him was starting to fall apart, under the weight of its own lies. Weeks passed. The air in Millbrook felt different now. You could see it in the way people walked, straighter, more alert, like they were watching closely, paying attention to things they used to ignore. The silence that once kept folks safe had turned into voices, loud ones, determined ones. The veteran walked through the streets quietly, shadow beside him, tail high, ears relaxed. His ribs still hurt sometimes, especially when the weather shifted. But the worst of it wasn't the pain. It was the memory of metal floors, of cold cells, of being called everything but who he really was. But healing had started. Slowly. A new precinct commander had taken over, federal oversight assigned after the raids. The building had been repainted, new policies posted on the walls in bold letters, body cams mandatory, independent review board, civilian oversight. Words, yes, but backed by people who now had something to lose if they failed again. Some officers had been fired, others charged. Some took plea deals, turning over internal memos, recordings, and details about the years of corruption under Marshall's rule. And Marshall? Gone, disgraced, arrested, awaiting trial in a federal facility hours away. They said he barely spoke now, lost weight, looked like a shadow of the man who once bragged about running the town. No one in Millbrook missed him. The people had moved, en chasse, but they hadn't forgotten. That morning, the veterans stood in Veterans Memorial Park, the same park where it all started. A small podium had been set up near the flagpole. Chairs lined the walkway, some empty, some filled with neighbors, activists, veterans, students, local leaders. His sister stood at the front, holding a clipboard. She was no longer just a reporter. She'd become the voice of the town. People listened to her now. The truth had made her dangerous in all the right ways. The mayor, newly elected after the scandal, stepped up to speak. He didn't make promises. He acknowledged failures. Then he stepped back. Finally, it was his turn. The veteran adjusted the mic and took a long breath. The crowd fell silent, not because someone told them to, but because they wanted to hear him. All of him. He looked around. "Some of you know me from that night," he began, voice calm but firm. "Some of you knew me before it, and some only heard about me after." A pause. "I was just going for a run. That's all. A quiet jog with my dog. Something I'd done 100 times before." His hand touched the new dog tags hanging around his neck, recast by the Pentagon, engraved with the same name but holding a deeper meaning now. But in this town, looking like me meant I couldn't just run. I couldn't just exist. I had to prove myself again and again, until one day, even that wasn't enough. He glanced down, then back up. I wasn't the first. I won't be the last. But something happened that night. You didn't just scroll past it. You didn't look away. You stood up. Murmurs in the crowd, some nodding, some crying. And that changed everything. He spoke for a few more minutes, not as a victim, not even as a hero, just as someone who believed a community could rise from silence if someone lit the match. He stepped away from the podium. The applause wasn't loud. It was long, steady, like rain that didn't stop. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, he sat on a bench near the memorial stone. Shadow rested at his feet. A few kids rode bikes nearby. A young officer on foot patrol passed, nodded respectfully. Nothing tense. No looks of suspicion. Just normal. His sister joined him, holding 2 coffees. She handed him one and sat beside him. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, you don't talk about it much." "I lived it," he said quietly. "Talking's your gift." She smiled. "Well, my next article's going to be on everything that came after. The rebuild, the reform, the people who stayed when it got hard." He looked out at the park. "Make sure you write about them too," he said. "The ones who never had a mic. The ones no one listened to until it was too late." "I will." They sat in silence for a long while. The lights in the park came on slowly, one by one. Families walked. Music drifted from a nearby open window. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel dangerous. It felt earned. He stood up, stretched carefully, and whistled for Shadow. As they headed home, a young boy waved at him from a porch and called out, "Thank you, sir." He paused, smiled, and waved back. Because now, in this town where silence once ruled, people finally knew his name for the right reasons. And this time, they weren't going to forget.